Good morning, students. So today we are going to start our new chapter, that is the respiratory system. So this is your first video. So first of all, what is respiration? So we know that respiration is a vital process in all living organism and it goes on non-stop throughout life. So the definition is respiration is the chemical process of releasing energy by breaking down glucose for carrying out life processes. As we know, we get energy from food. So those food are broken down into glucose that provide us energy. So there are many organs that participate in respiration, but the most important one is lungs. So the overall reaction is glucose plus oxygen, which converted into carbon dioxide, water and provide energy. Next, what is the need for respiration? Why it is important? So first is, this part of respiration yielding energy occurs inside the living cell and hence it is better known as cellular or tissue respiration. So this breaking down of glucose into carbon dioxide and water does not occur in a single step, but there is a series of chemical steps. Some of the steps occur in the cytoplasm of the cell and some inside the mitochondria. And in each step there is a particular enzyme that function. Next, the energy liberated in the breakdown of glucose molecule is not all in the form of heat, but large part of it is converted into chemical energy in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate, called energy currency of the cell. Next is respiratory organs. So the respiratory system in humans consists of air passages, that is nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi and the lungs. So the first part is nose. The external part of the nose bears two nostrils separated by a cartilaginous septum. The hairs present in the nostrils prevent large particles from entering the system, and the two nostrils open into a pair of nasal chambers. The inner lining of the nasal chambers perform three functions. What are they? First is, it warms the air as it passes over. Next, it adds moisture to the air. And the third is, its mucus secretion entraps harmful particles. So, we should always breathe through the nose and not through our mouth. The next part is pharynx, which is about 12 cm long and 2.5 cm in diameter. So pharynx is situated at the back of the mouth. It is a common passage for both air and food. And it leads into an air tube, the trachea, that is windpipe, and a food tube, that is esophagus, that is located dorsally behind the trachea. When not in use, the food tube is partially collapsed. Why? Because it has soft walls. And the entrance of the trachea is guarded by a flap called epiglottis, which closes at the time of swallowing food. Sometimes we get cough while eating food. That is due to incomplete closure of epiglottis during swallowing. Next is larynx, which is also called voice box or popularly called Adam's apple, is a hollow cartilaginous structure located at the start of the windpipe. You can even feel it with your fingers in the front part of your neck. When you swallow something, this part rises and falls. The next part is trachea, which is also called windpipe, that emerges from the larynx down below in the neck, where it is partly covered by a thyroid gland. Here you can see trachea. Its walls are strengthened by C-shaped rings of cartilage. The incomplete parts of the ring being on the back side. The rings provide flexibility and keep the trachea distended permanently. The next part is bronchi. So close to the lungs, the trachea divided into two tubes. In this picture, you can see how the trachea divided into two tubes and form bronchi, which enters to the respective lungs. And on entering the lungs, each bronchus divides into fine secondary bronchi, which further divide into still finer tertiary bronchi. Even the cartilaginous rings, as those present on the trachea, are also present on the smaller bronchi, so that it keeps them distended. And the bronchioles are the subsequent still finer tubes of tertiary bronchi, which acquire a diameter of about 1 millimeter and are without cartilage rings. The bronchioles connect to tiny ducts that lead into air sacs called alveoli. Alveoli are usually surrounded by a tiny blood vessels. It is in the alveoli of the lungs where the gaseous exchange occurs. Oxygen from the alveoli passes into the blood cells and is carried to different parts of the body. In this picture, you can see how gaseous exchange between the alveoli and capillaries take place. Here you can see pulmonary artery which carry deoxygenated blood from heart to lungs gets oxygenated when oxygen diffuses into red blood cells and passes into pulmonary vein, whereas at the same time carbon dioxide from the blood vessel passes into the alveoli. The next most important organ of the respiratory system are lungs. So lungs are a pair of spongy and elastic organs formed by the air sacs. They are connecting bronchioles, blood vessels, etc. The two lungs are roughly cone-shaped, tapering at the top and broad at the bottom. So now we know that this is trachea, which contain C-shaped cartilaginous ring, which then divides into bronchi and further divide into bronchioles, where alveoli is present. So we know that our lungs are roughly cone shaped with tapering end at the top and broad bottom. But the left lung has two lobes. Suppose this is the first and this is the second. So it consists of two lobes. And this left lung is slightly smaller to accommodate the heart in between. Whereas this right one has three lobes, but it is quite larger than the left one. Now let's talk about the membranous coverings of the lungs. So each lung is covered by two membranes, the inner visceral pleura and the outer parietal pleura, with watery fluid called pleural fluid in the pleural cavity that is found between the two membranes. So what is the function of this fluid? This fluid provides lubrication for the free movement of the expanding and contracting lungs. Because we know while breathing, during inhalation and exhalation, our lungs contract and expands. So our lungs occupy the greater part of the thoracic cavity and their lower bases closely rest on the diaphragm.